everyone, and welcome to another episode of Fan vs. Fan. We're talking Game of Thrones, Season 5, Episode 4. I'm Lyanna Lowe.
I'm Peter Counter.
Cersei, this episode, decides it's a good idea to arm the Westerosi version of Isis.
Up at the wall, Stannis learns how to love and gets his first hug.
Jaime and Bronn are just 2 white suits away from a Miami Vice remake.
And Dany loses her 2 best friends. So we're going to start off the show as usual with Dragon Eggs. This is the part of Fan vs. Fan where we take a look at pieces of the episode that allude to some really deep callbacks.
So deep, this episode.
Very deep, like first episode deep. So we're going to start with the scene where Sansa visits the Winterfell crypts.
Yeah, see, that was really interesting because she was actually at the tomb of her Aunt Lyanna. And a lot of people may not remember, but Lyanna was actually Ned's sister. And initially she was betrothed to Robert, and Robert was absolutely in love with her. And what happened is that Rhaegar, who is Dany's older brother, kidnapped Lyanna, and that's actually what started the huge war. And I use air quotes here because there's a big fan theory out there called L plus R equals J, and basically the fan theory says that Lyanna and Rhaegar were actually in love, no one kidnapped anyone, and they had a son who was Jon. It seems like this speech from Peter would actually support it because it gives us some details about the fact that, Rhaegar seemed to really like Lyanna, maybe not in a kidnappy terrible way, but maybe in a in love sort of way.
Exactly.
So an interesting thing about that scene as well is the sense of feather.
Right, and that's a feather from the very first episode of Game of Thrones. Robert left it there as a token of his love for Lyanna when they were originally betrothed. Instead of giving her flowers, he would give her exotic bird feathers.
Another cool thing this episode is that we got to see Tarth, which is actually where Brienne's from. So that was really neat.
We also got to see a very long-awaited thing. Sir Barristan finally got to fight. Now, we have been told this whole series that he is the greatest swordsman in all of Westeros.
Like, for a 75-year-old to kick that much ass?
He
what?
really was
amazing.
moving. But, I do have to say, it was kind of disappointing that the greatest swordsman in all of Westeros couldn't stand up to the 1%.
Oh. Alright, so what were your pros for this episode, Peter?
Well, I was really excited about how we really started to understand some of the end goals to the machinations of some of the more game-playing characters, mainly Cersei and Baelish. For Cersei, we finally get some clarity on what she plans to do with the Tyrells now that she's losing her power, and I guess that involves militarizing a fringe sect, a fringe religious sect.
Yeah.
And having Loras thrown in jail.
Totally don't see any terrible consequences to that. Seems like such a great, flawless plan.
At least for her, it seems that way. It doesn't seem like anybody is capable of getting her enemies out of prison anymore. She's it was a really fantastic play, and
I think Peter is the one that you kind of finally understood what his plans were for Sansa, because I think initially I was just so you're just completely using her, but it's nice that he seems to at least care about her well-being genuinely.
Exactly. It's everything that Littlefinger does is motivated out of selfishness, and it feels really good when you're oh, okay, but some good will come out of this if everything goes his way. And so, whereas you might not always be oh yeah, go Littlefinger, I hope, Littlefinger 2015 kind of thing, at least, if he succeeds, we'll have a Wardeness of the North who is a Stark.
Yeah.
Everybody wins there.
Yeah.
What did you like about the episode?
I think I liked it. I thought it was a great, solid episode where a ton happened. But my favorite thing that I'd been really, really looking forward to was the Sand Snakes.
Oh,
because, Oberyn has these badass daughters, and they're so powerful and so skilled, and it's so great to finally see them on screen. Could have really done without the weird nipple plates. that, again, a few episodes ago, we hypothesized that this was like a grander remaking of Joel Schumacher's Batman vs. Robin, and it seems that his costume designer somehow snuck onto the Game of Thrones set and added those little nipple plates.
Nipple breastplates.
Very weird. But overall, it was really, really great to see them, and already kicking butt in the first episode that they're really featured in.
Yeah, it was an amazing introduction of 3 characters that we'd only heard spoken of.
Yeah, it was great. Like, in one scene, you kind of like found out like what their MO is, and how they're kind of merciless when they really want to get things done. And it was great to see not just them, but like a lot of the female characters that we've been seeing this season just be so incredibly gung-ho about what they want to do and taking action and not being these passive wilting flowers. So that was just really awesome. I love seeing that.
Everybody's really embracing their inner Brienne of Tarth this season, and they're keeping their Lord Tyrell, relegated to the backseat.
I really like that. I really like that. You're either on the Brienne or Lord Tyrell scale.
Exactly.
I want to go full Brienne.
What were your cons for the episode?
Okay, I hate saying this because, in seasons past I've been like, oh, I love Game of Thrones, but it's so slow. And now I feel like I'm going to critique it for the exact opposite. Yeah. But I feel like I have to because the Cersei plotline just escalated way too quickly. I just didn't understand what was happening. Because at first, everything kind of started out slow, and I was like, oh, okay, like you're creating a small council full of people that support you. I was like, okay, that seems like a good plan. And then she sends Marjorie's dad away, and I was like, okay, like now I see, like that's how you're gonna get back at her is by like controlling the fate of her father. I was like, that's great, like Cersei knows what's happening. But then she decides to arm the sparrows, which at first seem like kind of nice guys that they're feeding the poor, like the Grand Sparrow seems like a good dude, and then all of a sudden within like 60 seconds they are carving shit into their foreheads, they're wearing these chains, they're murdering everyone, knocking down souvenir stands.
It would have at least been
the beer ad,
like could we at least get a scene of the head sparrow and Lancel being like, okay, how are we going to do this? Like, everybody gets a club, and what kind of shape do you like on your face?
It's just like, do we feel okay about like carving stuff into our foreheads?
Yeah, it's like, what's that going to look like when you're 80? Is it going to droop or there's no like incision removal?
No. And I feel like it just like, we don't need to see those scenes, but at the same time, we also kind of need to have an understanding that some time has passed.
Exactly.
And I mean, I know that, Jaime traveled to Tarth, and maybe that was an indication of like, oh, it's been a couple of months. But it just seemed that within the course of the episode, Cersei scenes didn't feel like a lot of time had passed. It seemed like everything was just happening all at once, and was very strange. It was very jarring. Well, that's it for us for Fan versus Fan, talking about Game of Thrones Season 5, Episode 4. I'm Lyanna Lowe.
I'm Peter Counter.
And what you can do now is follow us on Twitter at Dorkshelf.
And subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking right here.
Leave us comments. We'd love to hear comments.
Yeah, what are we doing right?
Yep, and also talk to us through our hashtag Fan versus Fan, or Fan v Fan, not versus.
Hashtag Fan v Fan. Yeah. And if you live tweet along with the episode using that hashtag, we'll be serving out retweets and responses. So be sure to do it.
Crazy.
Kicked him out.